Back in 1912, F.O. Stanley and Peter Hondius Sr. took inventory. There were 12 elk left in the area. So they sent a convoy of customized steam cars to meet a train from Yellowstone to import a small herd of elk for Estes Park, beginning a century-long series of elk management decisions.
They brought in 40 or 50 head, and the reason they had to bring elk in is that the hunters had totally cleaned out this area by the year 1900. So they had reintroduced them, and so the park, when the park is established, they introduce a growing elk herd, and it was finally in the late 1930s that they decided they had perhaps too many elk.
A famous letter from Stanley to Peter Hondius. It says, look, he says, from what I hear about elk and their propagation, we'll have to get Teddy Roosevelt up here to take care of them in a few years. Well, this is 1915. By 1932, they're leaving the park.
The biologists decided that they needed to really trim the herd, and so starting in the late 1930s into the 1940s, every year they would shoot 200 or 300 head of elk. There was some public reaction against that. I mean, this was supposed to be a no hunting park, but they still had a problem with that. And then in the 1960s, they allowed the herd to expand. And it's been a continuous revision of how to deal with just that one animal through the years. So indeed, it's a very complicated story. And when you're talking about biological or ecological systems, it is a real challenge in terms of management.
In the 1990s, helicopters were briefly used to capture and collar the elk. Considering safety for the personnel and the animals, this was not the most preferred method of control.
I hate to call it an elk problem because people come to see the wildlife and see the elk. Now today you can see them on the golf course, you can see them downtown. The issues of how do you deal with wildlife in a responsible way within confines of a national park is one of the real problems that the Park Service has had to deal with.